The erased legend. The stars had always whispered secrets, not in words, but in the slow churn of galaxies, the flare of dying suns, the cold silence of empty space. To those who listened closely, those who knew how to interpret the silence, there were stories hidden in the void, stories of civilizations that had risen and fallen long before any known species charted the stars, stories of empires older than time. Among the countless races that now inhabited the galaxy, each with their own myths, rituals, and cautionary tales, there was one legend that stood apart, a legend not celebrated but buried, not remembered but erased. It was not told around campfires or sung in songs. It was whispered only in forbidden archives, in the corners of ancient tombs, and in dreams that left the dreamer shaken and cold. They were called humans, a race so fierce, so relentless in their ambition, that the elder species of the galaxy had chosen not to record their existence, but to bury it. Entire libraries were purged, historical records altered, linguistic traces scrubbed from star charts. They weren't just forgotten, they were intentionally annihilated from memory. Some believed the humans had destroyed themselves in a final apocalyptic war, consumed by the very fire they wielded. Others claimed they had fled into the uncharted void, leaving behind only ruin and fear. But the most common belief, the one silently accepted by most civilizations, was that humans had never truly existed at all. Just a myth, just a warning. Yet the whispers persisted. There were too many coincidences, too many buried truths. A shattered planet here, a weapon schematic in a forgotten vault, a phrase in an ancient dialect that no translator could fully decode. Still, the major powers of the galaxy dismissed it all. They had no time for fables. The Dominion of Real, the greatest empire of the current era, had ruled uncontested for millennia. Their fleets were unmatched. Their technology stood centuries ahead of any challenger. To them, the legend of humanity was a child's tale, useful for scaring fledgling civilizations into compliance. Nothing more. But some feared the silence, not because they believed the humans were real, but because they feared why the story had ever existed in the first place. Who was afraid enough to erase an entire species? What kind of creature did you need to be to not only survive galactic war, but leave behind a legend that haunted empires? And so the galaxy moved on, confident, indifferent, complacent. The name human became a ghost, a forgotten syllable lost to time, until the day the fleet arrived. First contact. For thousands of years, the Dominion of Real had ruled the stars with an iron grip. Their territory stretched across hundreds of solar systems, their fleet unmatched in both numbers and firepower. Rivals had come and gone. Rebellious factions had risen and been crushed beneath their heel. They had grown complacent, confident in the belief that nothing could challenge them. So when a sensor anomaly pinged on the edge of Dominion space, it was barely more than a curiosity. The signal was faint, erratic, likely a derelict vessel or a scavenger fleet poking where it shouldn't. High Command authorized the dispatch of a single dreadnought, the Vash, to investigate. It was a formality at best. The Vash was no ordinary warship, bristling with next-gen plasma turrets, cloaked shielding, and AI-assisted targeting. It had never lost a battle. Its commander, Admiral Creel, was known across the stars as a tactician without equal. He didn't expect resistance, he expected boredom. That changed the moment the primitive ships appeared on the long-range scanners. They were crude, brutal, outdated. Lacking the elegance and curvature of Dominion design, they looked forged from war and necessity. Thick armored hulls, exposed engine coils, railgun mounts visible to the naked eye. They looked ancient, rusted, scarred, and they moved like no ship Creel had ever seen. "These can't be military grade," one of his officers muttered. "Who would even build ships like that anymore?" Another laughed. "Maybe a rogue mining guild from the fringe, or some archaeological stunt." Creel frowned. Something felt off. These ships, however ugly, held perfect formation. Their engines synchronized, their weapons charged without warning shots. It was military, disciplined, too precise for pirates. Then the transmission came. The bridge lights dimmed slightly as the audio crackled through. The language was unfamiliar to most, so old that Dominion translation cores struggled to decipher it. Then the meaning came through, robotic and chilling. "We are humanity. Surrender or be destroyed." No one moved. For a full 30 seconds, the bridge was silent. Creel's eyes narrowed, his scales shifting as tension crawled down his back. The word hung in the air like a specter. Humanity. A name erased from the archives, dismissed as myth. A story used to scare children or amuse drunk officers. He scowled. A bluff. Some fanatic cult using a dead language to make a name for themselves. But then the scans updated. The enemy fleet, though old in design, was moving with impossible coordination. They closed in silently, weapons charged. No idle chatter, no comm spam, just purpose. Creel gave the order. Eliminate them. The Vash opened fire. Plasma bolts lit the void, cutting toward the enemy with searing intensity. But the humans were already in motion. Their ships accelerated so fast the Dominion's targeting AI lost track. They swerved between incoming volleys with terrifying precision, as if predicting every shot. Then came the retaliation. The first Dominion cruiser went dark in seconds, its hull shredded by high-velocity slugs. Another erupted as a missile, yes, a missile, pierced its core and turned it into a sun. They're not using plasma, an officer gasped. It's kinetic. Those should bounce off our shields, Creel barked. Why aren't they? The bridge exploded. A railgun shell tore through the Vash's command tower like paper. The Admiral's final moments were a flash of red light and disbelief. By the time the last Dominion ship exploded, the humans had not lost a single vessel. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the battle itself, because the myth had just returned, and it had teeth. Part 3. Panic across the stars. News of the massacre spread faster than light. Within hours of the Vash's destruction, Dominion High Command was flooded with urgent transmissions. Long-range outposts had gone silent. Entire squadrons dispatched to investigate had vanished without a trace. Distress signals blared and then died mid-transmission. At first, many believed it to be a system malfunction, some glitch in the communications net. But the truth came crashing down like an avalanche of fire and fear. The humans were real, and they were advancing. The Dominion's inner council convened an emergency session. Supreme Chancellor Vakos sat atop his throne of dark obsidian, staring at the flickering holograms before him. Each one showed the same nightmare. Dominion fleets burning, colonies left in ruins, and ships, those crude human warships, tearing through defenses like they were made of paper. This is impossible, Admiral Tanak growled, his mandibles twitching in frustration. Their technology is ancient, their tactics primitive. They should not be winning. Vakos turned slowly toward his intelligence officer, a pale-skinned Varel named Sane. Her usual composure had cracked. Her hands trembled as she addressed the council. We have very little information. All records of the human species were purged generations ago. What remains suggests they were warlike, resilient, but nothing like this. She gestured toward the projections. Whole fleets, obliterated, entire sectors, gone dark. Every analysis the Dominion had relied on, every assumption about enemy capability, had failed, miserably. Perhaps, another general muttered, they were never truly gone. Perhaps they were watching, waiting. The thought sent a chill through the room. Enough speculation, Vakos barked. I want answers. Where are these ships coming from? How are they bypassing our outer defenses? Sane shook her head. We don't know. They appear from nowhere, strike, then vanish. No patterns, no logic. We suspect cloaked carriers, possibly deep space warp relays. And their soldiers? Vakos leaned forward. What of them? Savage, she whispered. They don't take prisoners. They don't respond to calls for surrender. Every world they strike is razed. Every soldier that resists is annihilated. Vakos fell silent. The weight of her words hung heavy over the chamber. They were not dealing with a rebellion. This wasn't a pirate incursion. This was a war of extermination, and they were losing. Worse yet, the human fleets were growing. The first wave had been small, perhaps only a test. But now, entire armadas had appeared in deep Dominion space, larger, faster, deadlier. The Dominion had mobilized Omega-class warships, the pride of their navy, each one capable of leveling a continent. Within days, they were gone. Wreckage adrift in space, picked clean of survivors. How are they building so many ships? Tanak asked, baffled. Where is their homeworld, their shipyards? We found nothing. Sane hesitated. We don't believe they're building them now. The ships, they're old, yes, but they've been maintained, modified, upgraded in secret. We believe they've been preparing for centuries." That revelation was the final crack in the illusion of superiority. The Dominion had ruled through fear, through control, through calculated, disciplined warfare. But the humans fought with chaos, adaptation, and rage. They didn't follow the rules. They didn't care about honor or protocols or negotiations. They struck where it hurt most: supply lines, command posts, shipyards, and vanished before reinforcements arrived. The Dominion had never fought a war like this, and deep down in their cold, calculating hearts, they began to understand this wasn't conquest, it was retribution. The buried truth: the war escalated with every passing cycle. World after world fell. Once proud bastions of Dominion control now lay in smoldering ruin. Entire sectors had gone dark. Civilian broadcasts carried nothing but static. Panic spread not just through the military, but through the civilian core systems. Riots erupted on central planets. Refugees fled inward, hoping the heart of the Dominion would somehow be safe. But nothing was safe anymore. Supreme Chancellor Vakos sat alone in the central war chamber, surrounded by silent, hollow projections of burning colonies. His generals, once loud and confident, now whispered. Even the bravest commanders had stopped pretending this was anything but a catastrophe. The humans were not just winning, they were unraveling the Dominion. And no one knew why. Vakos had always believed in dominance through knowledge. Secrets were power. But now, in desperation, he ordered the unthinkable: a full review of the Dominion's restricted archives. Buried deep beneath layers of encryption, accessible only to the High Chancellor's biometric seal, were the oldest files of the Dominion, files that hadn't been accessed in over 1,000 years. That's when the truth was uncovered, and with it, the shame. Humanity had not vanished, they had been eradicated. Long ago, before the Dominion had become the unchallenged force it was today, its predecessors encountered a species unlike any other. A young, fast-evolving race known as Terrans. Humans. They were curious, ambitious, dangerously adaptive. In a matter of decades, they had colonized dozens of systems. Their mastery of warfare, strategy, and alliance building outpaced every neighboring species. And that terrified the early Dominion. So they made a choice, not of war, but of genocide. Entire human colonies were incinerated. Orbital bombardments reduced cities to ash. Biological weapons targeted their food supply, their water systems. Survivors were hunted down, enslaved, or disappeared. Every record of humanity was purged from official archives. Their homeworld, Earth, was marked as a natural anomaly, destroyed in a solar event. But it had all been lies, calculated, cold-blooded lies. Vakos watched the footage in silence. Grainy images of human children running from firestorms, of armored Dominion soldiers executing surrendering civilians, of Terran warships fighting hopeless last stands against overwhelming force. His ancestors had not fought a war. They had committed a massacre. A knock came at the door. It was San, the intelligence officer, her face pale. "Chancellor," she said quietly, "we've confirmed the origin of the latest human fleets. They emerged from deep space clusters in the Orion Abyss, entire systems we believed uninhabited." "They survived," Vakos whispered. Sane nodded. "Somehow, yes. And not just survived. They've built an empire in the shadows. One we never saw coming." Vakos's hands clenched. "Why return now? Why not before?" Her reply was soft. "Because they weren't ready. Now they are." Another voice cut in, Admiral Tanek, barging into the chamber, his scales dark with sweat. "Chancellor, the humans have taken Chorus 9. Vakos' breath caught. Chorus 9 was no frontier world. It was an industrial stronghold, heavily fortified. "How?" he demanded. Tanek shook his head. "No survivors. Reports say, the showing, they deployed shock troops, exosuited infantry, no prisoners, no escape. They burned the cities, and then they raised a flag." Vakos' blood ran cold. "They're not just attacking," Tanek said grimly. "They're reclaiming." Sane stepped forward again, eyes haunted. "They're not here for conquest. They're here for justice, for revenge, for the blood debt we tried to bury." And as those words echoed in the silent chamber, everyone present felt it. This was not a war. It was a reckoning. The humans hadn't forgotten, and now they had returned, not as victims, but as executioners. Retribution at the core. They had taken Course 9, then Kethro 6, then Dral Prime. One after another, key Dominion worlds fell, not in weeks, not in months, but in days. What had once been a vast and unshakable empire was now unraveling before the eyes of its leaders. Borders no longer mattered. Strategic defenses crumbled. The humans were not simply attacking, they were dismantling the Dominion piece by piece. And now they had come for the heart. Val Prime, the capital. No one believed it was possible. The human fleets were still thought to be scattered across the outer colonies. Reaching Val Prime would have required punching through layer after layer of hardened defense perimeters, planetary interdiction zones, and orbital sentry networks. But the humans didn't punch through. They bypassed everything. It began with silence. Tactical sensors went dark. Satellite arrays failed without explanation. AI defense grids began to malfunction, turning on their own patrol drones. Then came the alerts. Too late. Dozens of human warships dropped from FTL inside the core system, past every line of defense. The Dominion's admirals panicked. Orders flew in every direction. Anti-orbital batteries roared to life, launching volleys into the upper atmosphere. But the humans had planned for this. Their stealth craft had already infiltrated the orbital platforms hours earlier, hijacking their targeting systems, locking out override codes, and turning the Dominion's own defenses against them. One by one, the skies above Val Prime lit up with fire. Dominion warships exploded in low orbit, raining molten debris onto the glittering capital below. On the surface, chaos reigned. Civilians screamed in the streets as power grids failed, communications went dead, and emergency sirens howled into a red-tinted sky. Shockwaves from orbital impacts shattered towers. Fires consumed entire city blocks. Then came the dropships, black-armored, fast, and silent. They descended through the smoke like vengeful wraiths. From within them emerged Terran shock troopers, faceless, exosuited nightmares who moved like shadows and struck with lethal precision. Dominion soldiers, trained in theory, used to drones and long-range conflict, broke at the first engagement. They had never fought enemies like these. Human infantry did not hesitate. They did not retreat. They did not spare. They pushed through urban ruins, clearing building after building, cutting off escape routes, targeting command bunkers and supply depots first. It was not conquest, it was surgical obliteration. In the war chamber at the heart of the capital, Supreme Chancellor Vakos watched it unfold in real time. Holograms blinked and flared red as every district went dark. All orbital stations lost, reported an aide with a trembling voice. The Eastern District has fallen, another whispered. No response from ground command. Admirals barked conflicting orders. Some called for a planetary shield. Others demanded a retreat. A few simply stared in stunned silence. Vakos, cold and grim, stood still amid the chaos. There is one option, he said finally. The room fell silent. The planetary annihilation protocol. A gasp echoed from his inner circle. It was a fail-safe designed never to be used, detonating the capital's fusion core to deny it to the enemy. It would kill billions. Chancellor, Sane whispered, our people. If we cannot have this world, Vakos said, eyes burning, neither will they. But before the command could be issued, the great doors of the chamber burst open. Two black-armored Terran soldiers entered first, weapons raised, and between them walked a human. No helmet, no fear. His face was calm, his uniform battle-worn, and in his eyes was something worse than hatred. Certainty. Vakos froze. He had seen this face before in the ancient archives. One of the last survivors of the genocide, a descendant of the massacred. The man stepped forward, eyes locked on Vakos. What do you want? Vakos growled. The human smiled coldly. Justice. Outside, the skies burned. Inside, the empire fell. And Val Prime, the unshakable capital, was lost in a single night. The sentence delivered. Val Prime fell in silence. No celebration echoed through its shattered streets. No triumphant cries rang out from the human forces. There was no need. The victory had already been written centuries ago. This was not a conquest, it was a sentence finally being carried out. By dawn, the Dominion's high command was no more. Supreme Chancellor Vakos, his admirals, and war ministers had been executed without ceremony. Their bodies left where they fell, symbols of judgment rendered, not vengeance taken. Across the galaxy, every Dominion-controlled world received the same transmission. It began with static. Then a figure appeared, clad in black armor, its surface scarred by battle. The human commander stood tall, unmoving, as if the weight of history pressed behind every word. His voice was calm, steady, unemotional. The Dominion is no more. The words fell like a hammer. Your leaders are dead. Your fleets are gone. Your empire has collapsed. A pause followed, not for dramatic effect, but for clarity. The commander looked directly into the lens, and for a moment, it felt as if he were speaking to each individual watching. For centuries, you ruled through fear. You erased our history. You tried to erase us. And yet, here we stand. Images filled the screen, Dominion soldiers surrendering, civilians walking from burning cities, the human flag rising over the ruins of a once glorious palace. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. But we do understand justice. Another pause, then the camera shifted, revealing captured Dominion officials in chains, their heads bowed. And yet, they were alive. The commander continued, "Those who resisted us are gone, but those who surrendered, those who had no hand in the crimes of your ancestors, will be spared. We did not come to rule. We did not come to replace your empire with our own. We have come to reclaim what was stolen." The message ended with a final sentence, delivered without hatred. Only certainty. The age of Dominion is over. What happens next is up to you. Then the screen went black. Across the galaxy, Dominion worlds stood still. Some wept, some rioted. Others simply stared in silence at the broken skies above them. For the first time in generations, the fear they had inflicted upon others came back full circle, and there was no escaping it. But humanity didn't stay. They left behind outposts to monitor peace, tribunals to judge war crimes, but no occupying forces, no demands, no flags raised in permanence. Their purpose had never been to rule. It had been to judge and sentence and walk away, leaving the galaxy to remember exactly who they tried to erase. Ashes and aftermath. The war ended not with negotiations, not with peace treaties, but with silence. When the fires on Viral Prime finally died, the streets were empty. The once towering spires of the Dominion's capital now stood broken, their glass facades cracked and blackened by smoke. The banners of the Real species, symbols of power that had once flown proudly across hundreds of worlds, lay trampled in the dust. And above the tallest spear, torn by railgun fire and scorched by orbital bombardment, a single flag fluttered, the insignia of humanity. Across the galaxy, billions watched. The message had been clear. The Dominion was finished. Their reign had ended in blood and silence, not by conquest, but by consequence. But what followed was not more war. The humans did not stay. There was no new empire rising from the ashes, no Terran governors appointed, no demands issued to the remaining species. In fact, many planets found themselves free. For the first time in living memory, no foreign fleet orbited their skies. No overseer barked orders from orbit. No tribute ships were dispatched to a distant throne. Some celebrated, others panicked, and many simply stood in stunned stillness, unsure what freedom even meant. But all of them remembered the message. We are not here to rule. We have reclaimed what was stolen, nothing more. It echoed from system to system, a haunting refrain. In the following weeks, reports emerged from the surviving Dominion fringe worlds. Humans evacuating, leaving behind nothing but warnings. Their fleets did not linger. Their soldiers disappeared into the stars. Their mission was over. Yet their presence remained, etched into memory, scorched into stone, whispered across every known language. And so the galaxy entered a new era, not one of human rule, but of reckoning. The fear of them lingered, but it was no longer the fear of monsters. It was the fear of accountability, of justice that might arrive without warning if tyranny ever returned. The Dominion had ruled through domination. The humans had answered with fire. And now the stars were quiet again. But everyone knew if they were ever needed again, humanity would return.